Vijay, we should start then.
So, very good evening to all. I am Vijay Nanja and extremely excited to welcome all participants and my fellow Cyber Gurukul members to yet another need of the hour and definitely interesting session. Today, at this modern Gurukul, we are learning and enabling go hand in hand technology consulting as well as cybersecurity storytelling complements. We will be imbibing the path of cyber maturity. We will adopt defense in depth in action, Cyber Trend 2023. And for the same, leverage the valuable insight and expertise of industry
Vijay, you've gone on mute, I guess.
veteran and our esteemed Mr. Navin Nair and India leads at technology. Mr. Kuldeep Singh, cybersecurity evangelist and CISO at NTPC. Kuldeep, Navin, we are looking forward to grab all the amazing learnings today from you and highly appreciate your presence. It's time to special mention our Cyber Gurukul core members, Satish, Kiran, Jagdishwaran, Anil, Srinivasan. Team, do share your input in between. And before I hand over this to our co-founder, Hers, to moderate this session, let me first welcome our speaker for the same. So Kuldeep, Navin, welcoming you all for this session for today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Yeah.
So Kuldeep, why don't we have, a short introduction from both of you before we, start the session?
Yeah. So a very good afternoon to all. First of all, thank you, Cyber Gurukul, for having me here in this panel. And thanks to all the participants for joining in. So I am from NTPC Limited. NTPC Limited, it's a 70 gigawatt power company. We are the largest energy conglomerate. We have spread over around 53 plus power plants, and we are into thermal, gas, hydro, wind, solar, and soon in nuclear as well. So we are a Maharatna company as well, and we have been ranked as #2 independent power producer in global energy rankings. I am right now alternate CISO at NTPC Limited, and therefore instrumental in the overall governance and policy framework, cybersecurity operations, and dabbling in IT as well as OT security. So the whole gamut basically I am looking at, and that's why I have a relatively large experience in implementation of the solutions as well as policy formulation. Simultaneously, we are juggling also the sectoral CERT hat, because NTPC is also acting as CERT thermal and advising and guiding all Indian power utilities in implementation of security and working as an extended arm of government agencies as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kuldeep, for joining, and Cyber Gurukul and all of us here definitely warmly welcomes you. And thank you so much for, gracing CG platform today. It really matters a lot to us. And I'm sure the, multifaceted roles that you have played from the cybersecurity, IT implementation, in one of the largest power sector related, organization, we're going to grab a lot of learnings from you today. So thank you so much for joining, Kuldeep, and equally excited to also introduce Mr. Navin Nair, who has been, related to Cyber Gurukul from a long time, and he had also graced our platform once before. So thank you so much, Navin, for taking out time today. So why don't we hear from you as well?
Hey, thanks, Harsh. Thanks, team, and thank you all for giving me this opportunity. So yes, as Harsh mentioned, this is the second time. Last time I think we were talking about zero trust. So this time we are going to talk about defense in depth. So from a career perspective, I have been part of DXC technology. DXC, as many of you would understand, is a system integrator, which basically means that we help various customers or clients to stitch together multiple security or non-security solutions and put them into action. Primarily, we are in the business of looking into various core banking, data center, insurance platforms, and then we provide the relevant security controls that should be working in these organizations. As a system integrator, one of our main objectives is to ensure that the availability of these critical infrastructure is there. At the same time, at any point of time, the confidentiality and integrity of data is not impacted. DXC operates across multiple geographies. In India, we primarily are working out of Bangalore, Hyderabad, Mumbai, and Delhi. Predominantly, there are close to 200 team members who work across 24/7 operations across multiple banks, PSUs, and mostly a bit of manufacturing and mostly insurance customers. So essentially, we not only look at the policy level practices that need to be followed, but also have to kind of ensure that the technology controls that are in place in these customer locations, they work seamlessly and they meet the customer objectives and ISMS. So that's what I would kind of stress, or as we progress further on the call today, I would like to kind of take on those pointers and see how best it fits into the topic that we have at hand. So once again, thanks for the opportunity, and thanks to everybody on the panel as well as the people who have joined in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Navin, and thanks for the kind words as well as the introduction. Definitely highly appreciate the thoughts that you have shared, and we are definitely looking forward for that action element, in terms of the defense in depth, like you mentioned, in that format of people, process, technology. So I'm sure with Kuldeep's, CISO mindset and your action element, we would be able to, dig deeper into the what and how, and also, the actual adaptation, because we really have to bridge that gap, that 30K, the gap between the concept and the application. So let's definitely try to do that today. So once again, Kuldeep and Navin, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm always, equally amazed with the constant support that our Cyber Gurukul core members, co-founder Vijaya, and the extended family provides to us, because that is how we together enable, engage, and empower. And today, we definitely have this wonderful opportunity to, dig deeper into the what and how of this holistic cybersecurity approach, also the need of the hour. But before we do that, and, leverage the insights of Navin and Kuldeep, like always, let us set the ball rolling. And this time I will definitely take help in the start itself from our wonderful audience here as well. But yeah, to start with, I'm sure we all concur that this modern era is the era of explosive growth. This is the time where we witness to the dramatic transformation in the digital landscape, right? This is the period where 66% of the enterprises have consumed cloud, not for operational efficiency, that was done many years ago as well, but for the business transformation projects. Data can be stored, shared, accessed anytime, anywhere, any device. And at the same time, digitization today has also promoted, or digitization itself has become really inclusive. Today, 75% of the population, which is an increasing trend, is consuming or going online for the professional, personal, education purpose, right? So we do use digitization much more than before. Of course, this is very encouraging to hear, specific to the last few years, but we do realize that there's a grim reality or the other side of the coin as well. This is the same period where we have been witness to an explosive or a massive or a rapidly evolving cyber threat landscape as well. As business leaders, or rather, should I say, national leaders and cybersecurity professionals, we have been struggling with this, I wouldn't say cyber crimes, but cyber war around us. Because today it's a whopping $6 trillion economy in itself, just after US and China. Much more disastrous than any natural disaster. In fact, the biggest human-induced threat, if I have to quote World Economic Forum. And let's not forget, as we get introduced to a new digital platform, there's a new digital attack surface, or for that matter, a new threat vector that we get introduced as well. Well, yes, this is something which is definitely not encouraging to hear. But the good news is that, as leaders, as professionals, we all have been, discussing more and more, and I'm sure progressing both in the direction and the speed to find that, that cybersecurity strategy that can help us in defense in depth. Well, today we'll be definitely digging deeper into the what and how and why and, when and all of that. Let me share you the CyberGurukul IMDb version of this, cybersecurity story or defense in depth story. In today's session, you can definitely expect for us to, understand this defense in depth in concept and action, keeping these keywords in mind. How do we identify the potential attack surface? Map the digital risk profile. Dissect and combat against the next-gen cyber threats, backed by the next-gen threat defense platform. So while, we are definitely going to break the ice with the speakers and leverage their treasured insights over here, their expertise over here, understand the story as well, why don't I first open up to the audience here, the core members, as well as the extended family, of your version of defense in depth? What is it that you understand when you find the challenges? Let's have quick 4 or 5 thoughts or feeds around here. You can unmute yourself and share your thoughts, or you can also utilize the chat box. In case we have Pranav, we can start with him. He was very excited to share his thoughts today.
Hey, thanks, Harsh. Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm not going to eat up a lot of time because I have been one of the speakers, and then I know how excited the speakers are, and everybody of us is to hear it from the experts, Navin and Kuldeep. But I think just a couple of things. Just to give you a background, I have been working with HDFC Bank in the information security team. Prior to that, I've worked with Deutsche Bank, and most of my experiences have been with the bank. My last stint was with Mahindra Finance as well as a deputy CISO. All said and done, I think, so normally I coin this defense in-depth phase as an onion strategy, right? So just like I keep on peeling out the onion, there are different layers altogether as far as, an onion is concerned. I normally, term it as an onion strategy, purely from a perspective that, you have really set the context right, Harsh, in saying that this is an explosive world. And as a banker, I can see that every time around, every day there are new technologies being introduced. Every day there are new applications which are being introduced, and I'm always pressurized, in terms of allowing those applications the way they are, right? But unfortunately, me being the security professional, I have to look into how do I then try and target and see that the security of my organization is maintained. So all said and done, I think, typically, just like we mentioned about the people, process, and technology, I would again keep on referring to the same, triad, if I have to really call it that way. I think very simply, if I have to protect the people, we need to have physical security controls or the environmental security controls. If I have to talk about technology, then of course, firewalls, antivirus, the list is endless. We keep on talking about those. And then, of course, the policy procedural or the processes aspect, I think typically in defense in depth, we would possibly try, call them as administrative controls. So a very typical example which comes to my mind is maybe a data classification or a retention policy, right? So all these aspects, once I try and talk about the PPTs, definitely will, bank upon how my security posture look like. As a CISO, definitely, I know for sure that there is no 100% security. My organization is always at stake. The attackers are usually one step ahead. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to achieve using defense in depth is obviously put one more barrier, one more barrier. I keep on putting these barriers till the time I feel, safe and sound that the attackers may not cross these barriers and then possibly reach to the core area of mine wherein the information is being put. So a couple of examples or a couple of advantages which I would like to quote and maybe give a full stop to what my point was. One is, of course, the defensive layer. As I mentioned, I keep on adding toll gates, to the core information of mine. So obviously, I try to reduce, the attack vector in terms of how an attacker will possibly point to my information. And then the other one, which obviously is a byproduct of that, is that in case an attacker is able to go through one of the toll gates, he's at least somewhere stopped if I have 4 to 5 toll gates, right? So that's a basic idea in terms of how I would go ahead with this defense in depth. Definitely, I would like to stop here because I want to hear it from Navin and Kuldeep. But these are some of my thoughts which I wanted to share. Thanks, sir. Thanks, Vijay, for that.
Thank you so much, Pranav. In fact, I think you also sound quite excited in sharing your thoughts. And yes, you have been our esteemed speaker a couple of months back in securing or future-proofing workforce security. That time also we had loved so many extensive thoughts you had shared. And onion strategy with the PPT-based format that you shared for the security posture definitely is something we definitely would be digging deeper into. And sometimes we really get we may feel discouraged when we are making so much investments in the cybersecurity and thinking on defense in depth. That time, let us remember that our current result is to add one more toll gate, so that is something which encourages us to keep on increasing the barriers. So amazing thoughts, Pranav. We will definitely come back to you later. Do we have any other thoughts before we
I
continue?
just, Pranav, thanks. Just a toll gate, so people prefer toll free, but this world, when we are growing, toll gates are bound to happen. Maybe we have to innovate. I just want to extend the discussion that digitalization, as Hers you said, that digitalization and more data will be there. So we have to be very cautious, but we have to make it simple also. Technology keep things complex, but we as a part of or important contributor to this ecosystem, we have to innovate, we have to collaborate, and we have to make it simple. Because if your data suggests that more than 70% of the people are going to use a smartphone, so all are vulnerable, all are impacted. So for inclusive growth, we have to have our strong defense ecosystem, and let's focus to make it more simple, more accessible in the term, so that even common person can understand and use it easily.
I think you covered one of the critical, pioneers of defense in depth, promoting inclusiveness. And like you said, Vijaya, very true, innovation, collaboration, and simplification is how we need to, wrap up this onion strategy, I guess. So very much, very
I
true.
think one more very important point, which I feel, I think we have multiple vendors to create the toll gate, but the important is keep reviewing it on regular basis, whether it is really working for us or not. Or unnecessary, we keep adding the products, and then end of the day, the performance issue will come into picture when we actually put too many security gates.
Very true. We need to balance the security gates, and constant review mechanism definitely will help us to be more relevant and suitable according to our organization, business objectives for that matter. Very true, Satish. I think that is also equally critical point.
That's a typical management question which is being asked to the CISOs. You are keeping on adding all these security tools. Is that really helping us? Right. So
Kuldeep is also laughing. I'm sure he'll share his thoughts over here, Pranav. Amazing, amazing.
No, but I think end of the day, the important part is it should not affect the business. after putting so much of security, so much of checks, I think important part is how it is going to impact our business or maybe application.
Very much,
It's
Satish.
very great.
And it's important to play devil's advocate ourselves sometimes to think on those lines. So very much, Satish, do bring up these pointers in between. Thank you so much. Any additional inputs in the chat box? Yes.
Hi Harsh, hi Vijay, and good evening to all panel members, our industry veterans and listeners. This is Raman here from Kaspersky.
Hi, Raman.
My
Thank
view
you for
on
joining.
yeah, thanks for having me here. So my view on defense in depth, which is a very significant topic. Harsh, thanks for taking this topic today. So I think it is directly related to info security, or I would say cyber security approach, where security and controls are layered with network to protect the confidential data. And the motto should be that the data should retain within the network. And there are some key vectors which are directly related to it, like technical control, physical control, and administration control, which is directly related to policy and the compliances. So if you look at 10 years back when defense in depth was not that matured enough, and CIO and CISOs, unfortunately, they have created a silo in their IT infra, and now they are trying to fix it and matching with their security roadmap. So I think it's a very significant topic, and now the CXOs, they are giving importance to it, and this should be directly related to the control with the administration's compliances policies, as well as the combination of the network, software, and hardware in the IT. So I think that was some of the view from my side, Harsh. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing your viewpoints, Raman. And definitely, we should stick to the objective, focus on the key vectors, not forgetting the physical policies and the admin controls that we need. Unification needs to be the strategy today. And I think, yes, this defense in depth would not have been mature before, but because we have been focusing on this aspect, we can expect some maturity, going forward. And of course, network, software and hardware is the key elements out here that we have been, planning to secure. Thank you so much, Raman. And I think there have been some, great inputs to start with. I'm hoping that as excited we have been, Kuldeep and Navin are also all geared up. And it's now the time to actually, cover more on the story aspect. So Navin, let me start with you over here. We have been discussing what is defense in depth strategy. Let me put it in a very different way to you. What is not defense in depth strategy, or what are those myths that needs to be debusted? So let's start it that way. Over to you.
Sure. So, in fact, I heard somebody say that, I believe it was Raman. So what is not defense in depth? Defense in depth doesn't mean that you keep adding, the same technology at the same layer, right? When you look at defense in depth, the concept is that you identify the various layers, typical to what the onion peel example that was mentioned, right? So you identify your various layers, and then you figure out what technology controls or technical controls that you need to put in. This could be policy level control, it could be administrative level controls, it could be procedures, guidelines, it could be tools that you put in place. But you put these at various layers, right? At various checkpoints or toll gates that you want to defend. But what you should not be doing, or what is not defense in depth, is to add the similar control to address the same threat vector, right? If you keep doing that, then you ultimately are slowing down the entire process, right? If it is not going to unless we address or we identify a particular threat, and then we put a control around that, we are not doing defense in depth. We are basically just adding multiple controls to do the same check. So that is something that we need to be careful about. The second area that I think is not defense in depth is where, if you have a or where the defense in depth will not work, is where you have all of these something that has been called as a supply chain attack, right? So like, if you are aware of, most of us would have crossed through this, when SolarWinds got affected, right? Now if you are dependent on a particular OEM or technology, and if the product itself has got a inherent vulnerability, right, which you would not be aware of, right, because you have trusted the particular product, you have whitelisted that product to come into your network, your endpoint, so all the toll gates, right? Difference in depth has got toll gates like network, host, then you have got identity, all of these. So, but then you have whitelisted that particular product to come in. Now, if you have a supply chain attack or a supply chain vulnerability that comes in, that's where a defense in depth control will not work in. So fundamentally, it is very important for us to, as CISOs, CIOs, or technology enthusiasts, to keep in mind that we should not be overloading, number one, and we should also at the same time understand that there are some limitations of defense of depth approach, which we should be cognizant about, right? So when we whitelist something, we need to be careful about what we are allowing to come in, right? So that's where I think we need to be, that's from my perspective, that's where defense in depth as a strategy or defense in depth as a control may not work. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Navin. I think, that is something we really need to understand, and maybe precisely the difference between just talking about a multi-layered, defense strategy and defense in depth. So let us not forget at this point that similar controls at one layer can actually slow down the business. Like I think Satish also mentioned before, cybersecurity need to be an enabler, not a roadblock. So I think this is something we also need to work on our strategy. And also let us set the expectation right and not, overload. Understanding the limitation of defense in depth strategy is also critical. So I think it was a very good example in form of the supply chain attack that Navin also provided us. So we will be, of course, step by step decoding this strategy more, both in concept and in action. But before we do that, Kuldeep, let us now come to you and, maybe understand from you also what has been the story around you from, those CISO's eyes or CISO mindset.
So, I mean, there is a lot. That is first thing. So there is a lot, many assets. There is a large spread. In our case, at least, I mean, any of the organization which is having many offices, right, which are having a great geospatial spread and technology spread as well. So in our case, the first thing is that as a power measure, we are having so many power plants. We are dabbling in multiple technologies. And then there is IT as well as OT. That part is already there. So the thing is that this visibility, first of all, we need to have very clearly, because until and unless you know what you are going to protect, how you will actually strategize and implement something, right? So first of all, that visibility is a challenge for any organization, but especially for other organizations which are having which are in production or process technology, those kind of area which are not, which are, we can say, non-IT, right? So that is the first thing. Second thing is that this digital transformation or digitalization, as Mr. Jha has mentioned earlier, right? So this is going on everywhere. I mean, every industry is doing that. So it is in IT, and then in OT also it is there. So we are having smart power plants. We are talking of remote operations. We are talking of multiple connections to external agencies so that we can have split-second responses to them. Then, in case of a power major like NTPC, we have to integrate forward as well as backward. So we are having integrations with mining companies. Then We also have integration with transcos. So we evacuate our power. Then we also have integrations with the grid operators so that they are seeing what are the parameters and exactly, I mean, there we are talking about availability for every particular second, and anything more or less can destabilize the entire grid, and a blackout can happen. So then we are also seeing that, okay, some far-flung areas, some IoTs might be placed. Some local requirements might arise. We may have RF-based store management. Somewhere we might have some Wi-Fi enabled instrumentation that is there, and we don't know yet about it. So there are so many things. And in IT, if you come to know, then when I joined 20 years back, we were working on SATCOM. So NTPC had a captive satellite network at that time, and every power plant was having a 7.5 meter antenna, somewhere 3.8 meter antennas, and we were, communicating on satellite. Then we have shifted to C-band, and then today we have already moved to MPLS. We have implemented SD-WAN, and there are so many things that has happened in communication technology as well. So there is a lot more change in IT as well. Cloud is already there, and we accept it or not, but we are into it already. So that visibility is a very big challenge for us. And if from a CISO side, I would say that looking at the people side, you see, we are not an IT company once again. So we have an employee base who is not very cyber savvy. So non-executives also are there, and they are also having accesses. They are also accessing our power plant network, business network, and our management also may not be very interested, in getting into the nitty-gritty of everything. But yes, they are interested, as you understand, what is the risk and what exactly are we paying to protect it. There should be a trade-off between the two. Otherwise, we just can't talk about implementing security everywhere and continuously layers and layers, right? So the third thing that is skill. That is also a challenge for everyone, because hitherto the power plant operators, they were operating these HMIs, they were operating those switches, firewalls were there, but they were not needed to be continuously tinkered with to integrate the IOCs and all that on a continuous basis. So that kind of skill shortage is also there, and people are already burdened with operation, and they also are required to look at the security, which was not the case earlier. And then not forgetting that our job is to provide uninterrupted power, and in operation technology, the CIA triad is inverted. It is AIC. So availability is prime most, even though we can have something, but yeah, I mean, for them, against IT, in IT it is CIA, but for them it is AIC. And then the legacy systems in OT, that is a major challenge for us, because they cannot just go at the speed of IT environment. And then how do we identify, how do we mitigate or control those risks? That also becomes important for us. And now there is a very increased focus from regulatory bodies as well as from the government as well, because we have seen the changed geopolitical atmosphere, and being a critical information infrastructure, we have all the critical infrastructure organizations, they have a target on their back, right? So the compliance is also very important for us now. So I know hit from all the sides, but yeah, I mean, that is the story that we are seeing right now.
I think, Kuldeep, you have perfectly captured the essence of how we are getting hit from all the sides. I would say that. On a serious note, I think you kind of, shared us the whole power sector business case, if I must say, with, of course, the burden of 3 years, the siloed visibility, the skill shortage, and of course, the sophisticated threats that we are seeing. The bigger challenge for someone like you who's also in power sector is not only on the IT side, but also OT side, the legacy system. So, and let's not forget that power sector definitely impacts the other industries, which, Kuldeep also gave us the example of mining, grid operators. So yeah, that's the level of impact that we are talking about. Continuing with, how we are getting hit from all the sides, securing the blind spots. Sometimes, digitization has been a good story, but of course, understanding, what is it that we've been missing, and securing that is another challenge in itself. And of course, compliances today with these reasons have become stricter as well. You also mentioned, Kuldeep, about the identification to mitigation strategy. Of course, that's a big struggle in itself. But how did you found the road ahead, or what are those cornerstones that you feel is necessary to adopt that, defense in depth in action? So, maybe you can help us step by step, decoding those different aspects, so, SOPs, or like a project, how we do it.
Yeah, okay. So I'll try to be as brief as possible, but you understand, right? It's a difficult job because see, so if from the start we see, so first of all, on the PPT side, if we go, so people, so obviously there were 2-3 things that we needed to do. First of all, everybody needed to know that cybersecurity is important. So there has to be a management buy-in there. And that's why a policy formulation from the very top is very, very required, right? And that governance and policy framework needs to be in place if we want to, you know, uh, the people need to be on the same page, as well as the security team and the top management. So that part also we have hit. What we had tried to do, that we have made a horizontal structure first. So first of all, there is a collaboration among the multiple departments. I mean, it is not only about IT now. So in OT, there are several sections because this is a big enterprise. So we have electrical, we have control and instrumentation, at least those persons where cyber assets are there. So we have made a cell. Okay, that cell will will always be in loop, so that any chinks anywhere or any kind of compliance issues or any guidance, if that is to be given, that is passed on first on a flat level. And then after that, at every site, we have identified the governance structure, like we would be having CISOs from electrical, we would be having CISOs from the CNI as well as IT. So anything flows very, very smoothly, and they'll have to ensure at the site that it reaches to the bottommost level so that nobody is left out. So first of all, that structure was put in, right? And then there were regular reviews. So I mean, you won't believe, but we are doing weekly meetings with all the site CISOs on a regular level. So that was the first thing that we have put. Then the second thing was the risk management. So first of all, as was already discussed in the panel, that we need to be very, very clear that whatever strategy we are putting here, it has to be in sync with the missions and objectives of the organization. Ultimately, we are here because organization is doing something, right? We shouldn't inhibit that. So for that, there is a strategy already in place, and an enterprise risk management system is there where cybersecurity has been dovetailed into. So like for NTPC, if you, for example, fuel shortage is as big a problem or as big a risk as cybersecurity, right? So, I mean, you must have seen some time back that, everywhere demand was very, very high for the power, and there were certain blackouts you must be seeing. But NTPC was generating, they have generated more than 100% PLF, right? So coal was a big issue, and it was handled well because we were prepared and there was a strategy in place. Similarly, cybersecurity has been dovetailed into the overall risk framework, enterprise risk framework. And based on that, we have moved ahead and seen, I mean, what are the gaps there where we need to put additional controls. So I'm already assuming, because you people are, I mean, everybody in this panel and in the whole meeting must be at a certain level in case of cybersecurity. So everybody understands what a cyber hygiene is. Everybody knows that, okay, antivirus, OS updates, everybody is knowing that, right? So we are talking about the additional controls which will bring depth into our security strategy. So first of all, let's suppose if we are seeing asset visibility, we also see that from the outside in, if there are some tools which can show us what is our attack surface. So we'll also look from the outside in perspective that, okay, if any of our public IPs are in domain and that are being shown as having vulnerable service running on them, and we don't know about them. So that is being continuously monitored. And based on that, there is another team that sits here and see that if it is actually the case, and then the reporting goes to the actual administrator. And after that, there will be again a follow up whether it has been closed or not. So just for example, in this case, Cyber Swachhata Kendra, that is one of these certain initiative. They are also very, very helpful. And any public IPs, I mean, they are actually doing national monitoring, right? So our organizations are, all the government organizations are taking their help also in maintaining that the overall attack surface is also visible to them and is being monitored. Third layer, what I would say, we have put that we are having our own arrangements as well, where we are ourselves seeing that, okay, if something might have been hosted in the cloud, and if it is using any NTPC certificate, maybe somebody is using NTPC header, then typo spots may be there, then there may be some chatter in deep and dark web, right? So those kind of pointers also we are taking on a continuous basis. Then there may be some breach reports, or maybe some reports for CNC connections being made out from our infrastructure. So that also we are looking. So that was one part. Then second part, I'll probably go on this line only. So let's suppose if something is infected, in our environment. For now, for less complication, let's say it is an IT, right? So first of all, we have to see that, okay, if there is an next generation AV or EDR in place, it would already be blocked. But we are not stopping at that. We are seeing that why it was initiated. Let's suppose if it was not being detected by AV or EDR, then further it will go for a secure web gateway, because we have a secure web gateway also at the perimeter level. So every internet connection is actually going through that. So there, if it is coming for DNS resolution, we'll again know, okay, there is a problem with this particular domain and it should be blocked. Fine. If it is even passing through that, then there is a firewall after that, which is also having an IPS IDS. It is case of inside out. So IPS IDS will not be working inside in, but yes, there are mechanism of application and URL filtering in firewall as well, which will actually flag that if there is some issue. So this may be the third level. And then fourth level, obviously, if it goes out finally, we would be detecting it through other tools that, okay, something has already happened, probably we need to do something before it becomes an incident for us, right? So that is one example that how we can do this. Another thing that supplier relationships that Navin was talking about very clearly, that in case of supply chain attacks, we are actually having some unverified trust, and that is, most of the time it is very, very important that it is there, because otherwise we can't function. But then what we are trying to change here, that in the SLAs, we are now also mentioning that disclosure should be there. So earlier it was the case that, okay, especially in case of OT manufacturers, say GE is coming or ABB is coming. So let's suppose if they are breached, and they don't inform us, that was okay. But now this needs to be built in into the SLAs, and these disclosures have to be mandatory from their side. So before we come to know that from the news, they should also inform us, right? That something has happened, and we basically, based on that, we may put some mitigations. We cannot obviously change the whole thing overnight. That is the problem in this supply chain attack cases. But probably we may further, put something onto our perimeter firewall, and do some other mitigations as well. Internally, we may put IOCs, and before it gets out, we do something. So those things can be done. Third thing is that in case of incident management, we need to be very, very sure that who is having what responsibility and how it is to be done. And there has to be a crisis management plan in place, not on paper, but it needs to be exercised. So there need to be drills, like we are doing phishing simulations many of the times, and if somebody is being breached, then we are actually also assigning a micro training to them, and we are following up whether it has been completed or not. And if same person is being fished again and again in multiple exercises, then probably something needs to be done on that part also. That needs to be built in into policy framework as well, because some kind of CDA rules or something, that if somebody is contravening those guidelines, there should be some mechanism so that corrective measures can be taken, right? So right now we need to understand, I mean, this motive has become different in cyber security. It has become ransomware as a service, malware as a service, right? So they are not sometimes seeing the target, they are actually after the money. But in case of critical infrastructure, there may be state actors involved. So we also need to look at the sophisticated attacks such as advanced persistent threat, and those solutions also are in place, and they should be, and there should be the network NDR kind of solutions, which actually can passively look at the whole traffic and alert us that something is going on maybe, and it needs a deeper analysis to understand if something wrong is going on. IOCs are a big help as well as challenge to us, because right now we are getting them from multiple agencies, right? Not only vendors, regulatory agencies are also giving, and these are like, we are getting some 800 domains, 3000 hashes in a day. So our security devices are also having a fatigue there. So there need to be some way to expire them, so that only relevant things are placed, and there may be tools then which actually can attach a reputation to all the IOCs, and based on that we can see that all the relevant IOCs remain in place while the others are passed out at all the times. So that is from my side. I think we can go on, but thank you.
I think this is definitely a topic which we can go on, but thank you so much, Kuldeep. You have quite hit the nail, and extensive inputs, definitely, serving the objective. Like you mentioned, it was, quite systematic in the PPT format to, have those cornerstones to adopt defense in depth, covering the management buy-in, the collaboration at horizontal hierarchy that you mentioned, the weekly cadence call with the site CISOs. I think that definitely does, bridge the gap in terms of the communication as well. Let's not forget the risk framework that needs to be in sync with the business objective. And that helps not only the preparation from the fuel storage, but also the cybersecurity perspective, like Kuldeep mentioned. This is something which we do keep on talking about, and we need to constantly also do that. The gap assessment analysis, the cyber hygiene, those additional controls that can actually achieve depth in the defense. The attack surface management, we talk about the risk profiling, like we've covered. I think you also covered, the importance of course, adopting, the IOCs or the additional threat intel from these, third-party sources. But we've also been facing some alert fatigue around this 800 domains, 3000 hashes. I think those are definitely huge, kind of a thing. Navin, when I come to you, you'll actually have to do a justice in terms of those, latest technologies and the trends that you can see today in 2023, how this can be a resolution. But yes, Kuldeep did mention few technologies on MDR, the EDR, the network controls. We will be, I'm sure, Navin covering more on that as well. And this may be a difficult question at the management level, but disclosures need to become part of facilities. So this is the time we need to constantly discuss on that. Kuldeep, thank you also for mentioning a bit on the incident management, the KRS that should be stitched, the phishing simulation and trainings that is required for the people element. So I think a lot of feed for thoughts, and I'm sure now we can have Navin stitch all these aspects with the technologies which get relevant. And Navin, you also have help with the question that Satish asked in the start. There are so many tools that needs to be monitored, so that's also a challenge. You need to cover that as well. So a heavy task I'm giving you now. Over to you.
No, so let me start with that disclosure that there is no one tool that can address everything in that particular defense in depth. So we can't look at network and say having a firewall and an IPS is the best answer, right? Or whether organization should invest in an APT, whether an organization should have a DDoS. All of these are perimeter level controls. And I remember one of the earliest questions that I used to ask in certain interviews was, what comes first, firewall and IPS? Now, both there is no correct answer even to that, right? So some organizations, yes, I know most of the people would say, let's put the firewall in front and then take the load off and then put an IPS. But what if your load itself is pretty safe and you're looking into an internal environment? So and you have answers in next gen firewall also. So there's no standard technology control that I would advocate, saying that this is the tool that you should put, and this will ensure that this is the example of defense in depth, and therefore you must have a tool like this in the environment. Obviously, if you look at banking or any of the regulatories, most of the regulations and RBI, they are given guidelines, right? So if you look at RBI, Gopal Krishna committee is there. If you look at most of the manufacturing, they go with the certain guidelines. So there is a standard list of checks and controls that every organization would go in for, right? So if you strictly ask from a defense in depth perspective, as long as you are covering those 4 or 5 basic areas, right? You must have a very sure perimeter defense, and I'll come back to perimeter defense in some time. But as long as we have certain controls on perimeter defense, we must have reasonable technology controls around hosts. The host that is being used, if it is a desktop, laptop, a mobile phone, whatever is being used to get access into technology, into the network, that needs to be adequately protected. Again, technology controls, if somebody asks, yes, obviously there is antivirus programs. Now there is EDR programs that we run. If you are a bank, then you must go with a PCI control. So then you have file integrity monitoring that anyway comes into picture. Irrespective of whether you're a bank, non-bank, manufacturing, you will have a data center. So at data center level, you must have that's where your DC level controls come into picture. So anything in DC has to be protected, whether it is for physical security, whether it is your operating system patching, whether it is operating system application level protections, right? And ultimately, in today's world, you are accessing data via applications. It doesn't matter whether you are a manufacturing organization or a pharma or a banker. You will be accessing data through some sort of a UI, right? So there will be a UI that comes into picture. So the UI then goes in the backend and queries the data. So obviously the application that somebody has written or coded, that needs to be secure. So as long as we are investing in those SDLC level controls, right? Whether it is a source code review or it is an application web PT that needs to be done for published URL, these controls will continue to go, right? Will continue to be there. And obviously, fundamental thing that I said, I'll come back to the perimeter defense. Now the perimeter today is no longer a sane world. There was a time where somebody could draw an architecture and say, here, this is the line where I can say this is internet and this is my data center. That line no longer is there. I mean, as we go into this work from home or remote culture, or work culture, or even if you are like, even Kuldeep would know, in terms of NTPC, there are so many things. At some point, eventually somebody would have to figure out a way to move some of data to a cloud. It could be a virtual private cloud, right? But somewhere those lines would be breached, right? So now when you don't have a very straight line of having a perimeter, what is your perimeter? And though at that particular level, you will have to invest in technology that will be securing those perimeters. So it could be as simple as having a proxy on your on your desktop or laptop, right? Which not only provides or filters your URL access. It could be the same agent or the same control would work in such a way to ensure that your data is not lost. It would again go on to check whether your user behavior. So if the same user is accessing from multiple geolocations, some controls would automatically prevent from him from accessing data. So then your perimeter is very much limited to your own individual desktop or laptop. So these controls we will have to kind of identify, and that, I think, that is where the CISOs and the CIOs have a very tough job to get into. The threat intelligence that Kuldeep mentioned, right? Yes, I completely understand that there's so much threat that comes in, but what is actionable, what needs to be retained, is again something that has to be kept in mind. So I think that's very there is no one shoe fits all same size. That proverb doesn't fit here. So we will have to think through and work it out. And Harsh, one of the other important areas is that as we go in, further and further, right? I mean, as 2023 comes in and everything comes up, while from a technology perspective, these controls would be there. I think we should focus on one is integrating the technology, right? So there's no point having multiple firewalls or multiple endpoint security controls or multiple identity access just because it was, or the one that is currently in place may not be meeting few requirements, but you don't kind of keep that and then invest a similar control. So that idea that we should integrate and optimize must be there. Second important point is we must know what to prioritize. Like, I'm not saying prioritizing from a budget perspective, but prioritizing from a perspective that what control comes first, right? To prevent that threat from coming in. Like, as I said, do you put the firewall first or the IPS first, or do you put a DDoS first? So that prioritization should be very clear in the mind of the CIO or the CISO or the technology resource that he was there, right? We need to know how the traffic is flowing and what should come first. So the same control or same architecture that works in a north-south traffic will not work in an east-west traffic, or should not be the way. So the prioritization is important. Number 3 is very important, is we should not have those technical silos. I mean, from even now, even after spending 20 years, one of the standard questions that I think auditors love to ask is, can you give me an asset list of your entire inventory? And I see a lot of our guys fumbling at that, right? Thankfully, server count is very much there, but you ask somebody the number of user versus desktop, and you say, why is the count of desktop not matching to users? Everybody will have a different answer to do that. So there are technical silos, and because of these technical silos, you have technology controls which may not be reaching the last mile. You will still have a branch or a factory outlet or a store or a authorization center where the same technology control is not there. So though you had a very good paper on defense in depth, but that depth is not there. You have the defense control, it's not reaching all your endpoints where it is supposed to be. And last but not the least, the wheel, don't reinvent it. these defense in depth, these controls, somebody has, all of us on this table, right? All of us participants forum, everybody who is there, we have done certain amount of work. So I've seen that whenever the new guy comes in, he or she would figure out that the past is absolutely not correct and we have to reinvent it. The amount of time that goes in reinventing the wheel, that again brings up cracks in the defense of depth, right? So that is something that I think what you have deployed, we need to go back and assess and then plug those gaps rather than saying scrap everything and reinvent it. So that is something that we need to keep in mind, right? So yeah, that's that's primarily, as I said, look at the controls that are there, try to plug them in, and then only introduce after you've optimized it, then only introduce the new controls. No, don't introduce control just because you want to add a few more.
I think, Navin, you've given us some amazing insights and also takeaways, so which has actually, like Vijay said in the start, that we need to simplify the cybersecurity. So I think, like Navin started, we need to understand those different areas of cybersecurity investments, which is like the perimeter defense, endpoint security, DC or the cloud security controls, and the data security. This also helps us to understand, the kind of investments we need to make it at every, these areas and the layers. Like Navin mentioned before, we should not be investing, similar controls at one layer itself. So I think this is the way to start off. Of course, let's not forget the shift-left security approach that we all talk about. Let us not reinvent the wheel. As much as focus is given on the tool, of course, we need to prioritize, we need to invest. Let us also think on the framework side and how exactly, the security can actually be more proactive. And like Navin mentioned, of course, the era of defined perimeter is over, which helps us to also understand the investments that we have to do. Today, like we say, the identity or the user or the cloud or the data is the new perimeter. So that's where, our additional controls need to, come into the picture. In regards to the Kuldeep's question, Navin did discuss briefly on that, threat intel platform. So today, as much as we are talking about these, pointed products, stitching those simplification, integration, and might I add on the automation part, we may be able to get some answers on those, the siloed visibility and the kind of other 3S that we had spoken about, the skill shortage and other aspects. So of course, a platform-centric security story, just I may add here, may be of a good help, like MDR, which was mentioned by Kuldeep. And of course, let us understand the objective of the investments that we are making. Are we trying to do it for the east-west or for the north-south traffic? That is how we'll have the clear prioritization of those tool investments. And of course, no size fits all is something we need to remember. Let us assess the gaps and not, like mentioned before, reinvent the well, the wheel. Let us also try to plug and stitch. I guess that's the reason, as much as we talk about the technology, it is people process technology, or maybe people process platform. So I think a lot of feed for thoughts for all of us by Navin and Kuldeep. But before we wrap up, we may take one question here, if there is. Although it's quite clear, but yeah, we are ready to take it.
Participants, you can put it in chat also if you have some query to be raised, or you can unmute and raise your hand.
So anyways, thank you so much, Kuldeep and Navin. So let's just take final takeaways from you. Kuldeep, 30 seconds takeaway, and then we'll take Navin's.
So first of all, look at everything. Visibility is very, very important before you are going to implement anything. So make sure that visibility is there, monitor on a continuous basis, and see that communication is open and everybody knows what they have to do in that sense of line. Defense in depth is important, but you need only to put those controls which are required. I mean, nothing is applicable for all. So that we need to understand, and that will come from the risk prioritization, I think, and do audit.
Very much. The visibility, constant monitoring, audit, open communication, and the risk prioritization. This is what needs to complement the defense in depth strategy. Navin, the final takeaways from you, please.
Yeah, I mean, Kuldeep mentioned it correctly. You need to stay true to what you signed up for, right? So you have a policy, trust in your organization policy, revisit that. From the policy comes an architecture, keep revisiting the architecture, and then ensure that whatever you signed up for, whatever we said that we will do, you ensure that it is done to the last mile. As long as there is 100% compliance to whatever we agreed to do, I think we are fairly safe. And then every year just go back to the policy document and visit that and update that. Once you update it, then you spend the next 1 year to ensure that it reaches the last mile. If you can do that, I think we are fairly safe. So even if it is in difference in depth, revisit your layers, know your layers very well, figure out what fits into each of the layers. If you find out that there are some certain areas in the layer which are getting weak or there's a gap in that layer, go and plug that in. And when you plug it in, ensure that it is 100% done to the last level. If you've done that, then fairly controls are going to work fine, and you should be able to get a good night's sleep.
Let's hope sometime we get a good night's sleep. With, of course, the approach Navin mentioned, again, complementing the DID strategy or defense in depth. So identify, assess, design the policy, the architecture, take the action, and review. So I think that pretty much sums it up. But before we wrap up, Satish, Vijaya, would you like to add something? And then we are good to go.
I think what we want to protect is very key when we work into such large organization. Okay, depending on a single vendor is very difficult because none of the solutions are foolproof. So, and again, third is role-based security is very critical. That will always help us to improve the TAT in the overall performance. Okay, more approvals you put, I think identification, what I think Kuldeep talked about. Okay, more approvals you put, I think the TAT is going to increase. So just see whether is it really required to protect everything. So just identify the key data and then start putting it rather than putting up everything for everybody.
Definitely. What you want to protect is the key, and role-based security cannot be missed. That can increase the effectiveness of that. I think Satish, very well said. And Vijaya, before we wrap up, your final thoughts.
No, I guess, thank you so much. We are well within time also. So Navin, Kuldeep, very good and knowledgeable session. I hope everyone enjoyed and gain some leaf to implement in their day-to-day operation and work. Thank you so much.
You very much, Kuldeep, Navin, with your help, we definitely have served the purpose today, and a lot of inputs, a lot of insight, thoughts that we could, leverage. And that definitely comes from the kind of expertise and experience you have. And once again, thank you for sparing your valuable time today. Really appreciate that. Thank you for joining us. And we will keep continuing to enable, engage, and empower. But yes, Navin, Kuldeep, I think, please add on before we actually do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for everyone.
Yes, and today is Vishkarma Puja, so we can pray that that will help us to bless and stage cybersecurity and defense, everything in order. Maybe
next session we'll discover some more trends like this. Vishwakarma is going to help us in all the way.
Absolutely.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, CyberGurukul, and thank you, Harsha. Thank you. Thank you, Navin. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, thanks, Kuldeep. Good catching up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And like mentioned, let's be blessed, even in terms of cybersecurity. Take care and have a good weekend. Thank you so much, Kuldeep, Navin, Vijaya, Satish, and all. Thank you so much.